The battlefield was a nightmare. Smoke covered the skies. Flames danced over broken machines and fallen bodies. Captain Raynor moved through the chaos like a shadow. His rifle ready, eyes sharp. He had seen too many wars, too much death. But nothing could prepare him for what he was about to find. He stepped over metal parts. His boots heavy on ash and blood, screams echoed in the air. Some were human, some were not. His team was far behind. Lost in the dust and confusion alone, Raynor pushed forward. Hunting the last of the alien enemies, the Valari. Tall, fast, cruel creatures who had killed millions of humans. No one showed them mercy, not until today. A sound stopped him. Not a scream, not a voice, but a soft, helpless cry. Like a small animal trapped in pain, Raynor froze. Turning his head toward the broken transport vehicle nearby, it was alien-made, smoking and torn in half. Another cry came, louder this time. Weak but full of fear, he moved closer, heart pounding. This wasn't right. There were no reports of civilians here. Only enemy soldiers still. The cry didn't stop. He pushed aside metal scraps, his gloves burning from the heat. Then he saw her, a small creature, maybe 3 feet tall. Her skin a soft silver blue. Big dark eyes stared at him, full of tears and terror. She was a child, and a Valari child. Her leg was stuck under a heavy beam, her tiny fingers reaching out. Raynor raised his gun on instinct, but his hand didn't move. She wasn't a soldier, she was just a kid. She looked at him not with hate, but with fear. The same fear he had seen in human children back on Earth. Something broke inside him. The radio buzzed. "Captain Raynor." "Respond," his commander shouted. "Leave that area now. Enemy reinforcements are coming." Raynor looked at the child. Then at the sky. He had seconds to choose. He dropped his rifle and knelt down. "Easy, easy," he whispered. She didn't understand his words. But she stopped crying. He lifted the beam carefully. Biting back the pain in his shoulder, she whimpered but didn't scream. When the beam was off, he picked her up, wrapping her in his armored cloak. The radio screamed again. "Raynor, do you copy?" He turned it off. Raynor ran, holding the alien child close. Behind him, the transport exploded, sending fire into the sky. He ducked into the trees, heart racing. The child shivering in his arms, he didn't know what he was doing. Only that he couldn't let her die. An old escape pod was hidden nearby, used for emergencies. He forced the door open, placed the child inside, and started the launch sequence. His shoulder was bleeding. His vision blurred, but he kept going. The pod lifted into the air. Rising fast, then everything went black. Time passed, he didn't know how long. When he woke up, soft light filled his eyes. He wasn't in the pod anymore. He was lying on something smooth and warm. Not human-made, strange symbols glowed on the walls. Raynor sat up quickly, ignoring the pain in his side. Across the room stood 3 tall figures, Valari warriors armed and watching, and beside them, holding someone's hand, was the child. She pointed at Raynor and said something in her language, a word he didn't understand. But her voice was soft. The warriors didn't move. Then another figure stepped forward, taller, cloaked in gold and silver robes. Her eyes were deep purple, filled with power, wisdom, and sorrow. The queen of the Valari. She looked at Raynor not with anger, but with something else, respect maybe, or curiosity. Then she spoke, her voice calm but strong. "You saved my daughter," she said in broken English. "For this you will not die." Raynor stared, heart pounding again. He had saved the enemy's child, and now the enemy queen called him something he never expected. "Welcome," she said, "to our world." Raynor opened his eyes slowly. Everything around him felt too clean, too quiet. He wasn't on Earth, he wasn't even on a human ship. The walls curved like waves, glowing with soft blue light. Symbols moved across the air like living writing. He was inside a Valari healing pod. His body felt different, lighter, but aching. Wounds that should have killed him were gone. He touched his chest where the blast had burned him. Smooth skin, no scar, the aliens had healed him. Why? The door slid open without a sound. 2 Valari guards stepped in, tall and cold, their faces hidden behind dark masks. They raised no weapons, but their eyes followed his every move. Behind them walked a smaller figure. It was her and the child. She walked straight to him, holding something in her tiny hands. It was a small glowing stone, pulsing like a heartbeat. She placed it in Raynor's palm and looked into his eyes, not with fear this time, but with trust, like he was safe. A voice echoed behind them, calm but commanding. "She speaks of you often." Raynor turned. It was the Queen, standing tall and proud in her silver robes. Her voice was heavy with power, but her eyes were tired. "You saved her," she said, when others would have ended her. Raynor stood slowly, confused and guarded. "I didn't do it for you," he said. The Queen nodded. "But you did it," she replied. "And now, things have changed." Raynor looked around. "Am I a prisoner?" he asked. "You are a guest," she said. "But you cannot leave." The words hit him like ice. He took a step back, his muscles tensing. "I saved a child, not your war," he said. "And yet, your war is here," she answered. Raynor was taken to a chamber that looked like a garden. Glowing plants floated in the air. Music played from invisible strings. Valari walked through the light, some staring at him with curiosity, others with hate. To them, he was still a killer, but not to the child. She followed him everywhere like a shadow with a soft laugh. Her name, he learned, was Laika. Raynor spent days in the alien city. Each day he learned more. Their language was hard, but the child helped. The Queen sent teachers, scientists, healers, artists. They didn't show him weapons. They showed him pain. He saw images of human attacks, cities burning, families running. He saw Valari mothers crying over small, lifeless bodies. He had never seen their side. The war had only ever shown him one truth, but now that truth was cracking still. Not all Valari wanted peace. One night, Raynor woke to whispers outside his chamber. Two guards argued in their language. One pointed toward the door. He heard the words traitor and death. He knew they meant him. The Queen summoned him the next morning. They met in a silent hall filled with light. She held a device in her hands, a human radio. "We intercepted this," she said, playing a message. Raynor listened as a human voice spoke. "Target located. Strike team ready, retrieve or kill." It was from his own army. They were coming for him and for the child. Raynor's voice was heavy. "They think I betrayed them," he said. The Queen's eyes were sad. "To them, you are lost," she said. "To us, you are something else." "What?" he asked. She looked at Laika, who had just entered the room, smiling as she ran toward him. "To her, you are a shield," the Queen said. "To me, you are a key." Raynor didn't understand. The Queen stepped closer, her voice lower. "There is something coming," she said. "A truth too heavy for war." She paused. "You must stay. Until the child is safe." Raynor's heart burned. He was a soldier without an army, a man without a home. But when Laika grabbed his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his, he didn't pull away. "I'll protect her," he said quietly. The Queen nodded. "Then you are no longer just human," she said. "You are something more, far above the city." Human ships moved closer in the dark. War still lived in the stars. But now something else was growing. A bond, a choice, and a danger no one had seen yet. The skies above the Valari city were no longer silent. Human ships drifted just beyond the planet's reach, cloaked and watching inside one of them. Commander Briggs stood over a glowing screen. "Confirmed," he said coldly. "Raynor's alive, and he's with them." The order was clear: retrieve or kill. No rescue, no trial. To the humans. Raynor was now a traitor, down on the planet. Raynor stood on a high balcony. Valari towers shimmered like crystals in the soft light. But his mind was somewhere else, back home. Back on Earth, he thought of the flag he once wore, the men he trained with. He remembered their faces, their trust. He had broken that behind him. Laika played in the garden, her laughter gentle like wind chimes. She had begun to smile more, talk more. She trusted him completely now, and somehow, that made the weight in his chest even heavier. The Queen called him to the inner chamber that day. She looked troubled, her voice quiet. "There are humans in orbit," she said. "They are close, and they are angry." Raynor didn't flinch. "I knew they'd come," he said. "I just didn't think it would feel like this." The Queen's fingers touched a glowing map. "They want the child," she said. "They believe you've been used and or turned." Raynor shook his head. "I saved her," he said. "That's all I did." She looked into his eyes. "That was enough to change everything." That night he dreamed of fire again, but this time, the fire wore human faces. The next morning, Laika ran into his chamber holding a small device. She tapped it and a human voice played. Familiar, cold, sharp. It was Commander Briggs. "Raynor, if you hear this, come out," he said. "There's still a way back." But not for long. The message ended with coordinates. Raynor stared at the device. Laika looked up at him, worried. "Are you going?" she asked softly. He didn't know what to say. Later that day, he stood alone on a ridge, watching a human drop pod land far beyond the forest. He knew what it meant. A team had been sent. Not to talk, to hunt. The Queen approached him in silence. "You must choose," she said. "Run. Or stand." Raynor clenched his fists. "I'm tired of running," he said. "But I can't let them kill her." She nodded. "There is a place. Deep in the roots of our city," she said. "Old, forgotten. She will be safe there." Raynor's jaw tightened. "And me?" "You'll buy her time," she said. "Or you'll die trying." That evening he walked with Laika through the glowing halls. She held his hand tightly. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she whispered. He stopped walking, knelt down, and looked into her eyes. "I have to," he said. "To make sure no one hurts you again." She pulled a small pendant from around her neck. It glowed with a soft purple light. "For luck," she said, placing it in his hand. He closed his fingers around it and nodded. Raynor met the human strike team in the burned valley, the same place where the war had first touched the Valari world. He didn't come to fight, he came to talk. But they didn't listen. Bullets flew first. Questions never came. Raynor ran, dodging between the rocks, his body remembering every move from training. They were fast, but he was faster. He knew their tactics, their angles, their pride, one by one. He took them down, not killing, only disabling. He wasn't here to kill his own, he just wanted to be heard. But then, a shot rang out, not from a soldier, but from Briggs himself. Raynor fell, shoulder bleeding, his breath stolen by pain. Briggs walked over slowly, gun still raised. "You could have been a hero," he said. "I still am," Raynor answered through clenched teeth. Briggs aimed again, but before he could fire, a strange sound filled the valley, like wind inside metal. Valari ships uncloaked above, dozens of them hovering silent, watching. Briggs froze. The Queen's voice echoed from a speaker inside his comm. "This is not your world," she said. "This is not your child." Briggs lowered his weapon. Raynor passed out again. When he woke, he was back in the city. His arm wrapped, his chest aching. Laika sat beside him, asleep on the chair, the pendant still glowing in his hand. The Queen entered quietly. "You are hunted by your own," she said, "but you are not alone." Raynor looked at the child, then at her. "No," he whispered, "not anymore." Outside, human ships pulled back into the stars. But war was not over. It was only waiting. The city hummed with quiet electricity. Raynor could feel it in his bones, a low pulse like a distant heart. The Queen moved through the halls like a tide. Every step measured, every look a map. She called him to the Hall of Mirrors, a room of glass and light that showed not faces but choices. He followed, Laika close at his side, her small hand warm in his. They entered together, the mirrors reflecting endless versions of them. Raynor saw himself as a soldier, as a prisoner, as a father, as a traitor. Laika giggled softly, pointing at a reflection where she wore a crown. The Queen watched them and then spoke without anger, only fierce calm. "We have a weapon," she said. "A human weapon hidden on your world, made by your people for our destruction." The words landed like stones. Heavy and dark. Raynor had heard rumors. Whispers passed in the smoke of war. But to hear it named by the Queen made it real. A rope tightening around the future. "How do I stop it?" he asked, voice small in the wide hall. The Queen placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch a promise and a blade. "You will go back to Earth," she said. "Not as a spy, not as a soldier, but as a messenger." Raynor blinked. The idea felt impossible, like walking into a storm with a lantern. "The weapon can be stopped if its builders see the truth," she continued. "If they know what their hands made." He thought of the faces he had left behind, the friends who would call him traitor, the commanders who would call him coward. "Why trust me?" he asked, honest and blunt. The Queen's eyes were like polished stones, deep and endless. Because you were the first to cross that line, she said. You carried mercy into the fire. Laika tugged his sleeve and looked at him with the kind of faith that melts steel. I will not send you alone, the Queen added. You will have a small crew and a ship masked by Valari light. You will speak to those who still listen. That night, preparations moved like shadows, silent and quick. Valari engineers worked on a ship that learned to hide like a chameleon, its skin folding light around itself. Raynor watched them bend physics into art, his heart both full and heavy. He learned the plan in pieces, brittle as glass and bright as flame. The Queen wanted proof, not threats. And she wanted people to see the child, to see Laika's face, to see what mercy looked like in the quiet hours. Raynor practiced the words he would say, not to commanders and not to generals, but to builders and scientists and those who once loved invention more than war. He would show them that their weapon could kill their own future. He would not promise peace, he would promise a choice, a chance to step back from the precipice. Laika lay on a bench nearby, humming a small Valari song, her breath regular and calm. She had learned to speak some human words. And when she said home, Raynor felt a new kind of fear, one that pulled him like tidewater. The morning they left, the city watched in silence. A small crew went with him, Mira, a Valari healer with quick hands and softer eyes, Talon, an old pilot who had flown through comet storms and still drank tea with the same calm, and Sarah, a human engineer who had been rescued and healed by the Valari after her ship crashed months earlier. She did not trust Raynor, but she trusted truth. They boarded the masked ship and the Valari seals closed, folding light until the ship vanished from sight. They slipped through space like a ghost, a quiet line against the dark. Raynor thought of Briggs and the men he had faced, and of the strike teams waiting in shadow. He thought of the weapon and its builders, hidden in a vault beneath a research city on Earth, where metal hummed and equations killed. When they dropped into atmosphere, Earth looked both small and enormous, blue and bruised. They landed in a remote field far from the weapons guard towers. Sarah checked the communications, Mira read the air like a book. Laika stood at the door, watching everything like a small soldier. Raynor adjusted his jacket, the pendant Laika had given him heavy against his chest. They moved toward the research city on foot, through ruins of old battles, past fields that had fought and lost. Inside the city, the towers of glass reflected a sky that looked like steel. People hurried with purpose, voices like clocks, minds tuned to machines instead of music. Raynor felt naked and loud among them, his Valari allies close but hidden, his motives a secret bright as a flare. He found the laboratory under the third sublevel, where the weapons core lay sleeping in a chamber of iron and light. Sarah's hands moved on panels, her fingers a memory of trust. They entered the control room and Raynor spoke to the engineers, not with guns but with a story, a small true thing. He told them about a child who smiled like a broken sky, who touched his hand and made him stop hating. He showed them Laika's small hand and the pendant, the stone glowing like a steady pulse. Some looked away, others reached out, and one old man sat down and wept, because in his mind his invention had never been meant for death, only for stopping fear, but not everyone listened. A siren screamed and metal doors slammed. The weapons guards had been alerted. Raynor grabbed Laika and ran toward the core, Sarah beside him hacking locks, Mira singing a healing chant that in war sounded like a prayer. They reached the chamber just as the alarms grew teeth. Raynor placed his hand on the control console and met the eyes of the lead scientist. I can change the course, he said. I can make them see what this will do. The scientist hesitated, the weight of creation heavy on his shoulders. Outside, the city held its breath, waiting to see which way the world would tilt. The earth smelled different, even the air felt heavier, thicker, full of noise and memory. Raynor walked through the ruins of an old human colony, his boots crunching glass and dried leaves beside him. Laika held tight to his hand, her eyes wide. To her this was a new world, but to Raynor it was a graveyard. This was the place where he had trained once, where he had learned how to fight, how to shoot, how to win. He had walked these streets with pride in his heart. Now he walked with fear. Sarah stayed close, guiding them through back alleys and broken rooftops. She had once lived here too before her crash, before the Valari saved her. Now she moved like a ghost. Silent, watching, remembering. Mara whispered small Volari prayers to calm Laika, who was starting to shiver from the cold and the silence. The lab they had visited earlier was locked down. The alarm had changed everything. The team only had one chance now, to find someone who still trusted Raynor. Someone who would listen before it was too late. He thought of Dr. Elias Rowe, an old friend from the academy, a man who once designed tools to heal, not weapons to kill. Now he worked for the military. Deep in the tech sector of New Unity City, Raynor hoped his heart hadn't changed. They moved at night, blending with shadows, using old tunnels to avoid patrols. News reports showed his face now. Wanted, Raynor Gray, traitor, spy, kidnapper. A reward offered for his capture, dead or alive. Raynor avoided looking at screens, but Laika kept noticing the images. "That's you," she whispered. Pointing at one, he nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "But it's not the whole truth." They reached New Unity in the early hours of morning, a city made of glass and steel, polished and cold. Raynor wore a hood. Sarah adjusted her visor to fake military clearance. Mara stayed behind with Laika in a safe house below the city's surface. Raynor hated leaving her, but this was too dangerous, too exposed. He and Sarah walked through the main gate and used old credentials to pass into the inner research ring. To Raynor's surprise, no one stopped them. Not yet. Dr. Rowe's office sat at the top of a circular tower. Wrapped in moving data screens, Raynor waited in the shadows outside the door. Sarah walked in first, her voice calm. "I have a visitor," she said. Rowe looked up, tired, curious. When Raynor stepped in, Rowe stood up so fast he nearly knocked his chair over. "Raynor?" he whispered. "You're alive?" Raynor nodded. "I need your help," he said. Rowe's hand shook as he locked the door, pulling down the blinds. "You're being hunted," he said. "Half the city wants you dead." "And the other half?" Raynor asked. "Too scared to speak?" Rowe replied. Raynor placed a small device on the table. A hologram lit up, showing images of the weapon, its design, its power, its target. Then it showed something else, Laika's face, her laughter, her tears. Then video from the Volari archives, humans bombing alien cities, children running, mothers crying. "This is what I saw," Raynor said. "This is what changed me." Rowe watched in silence, his face pale. "I designed part of this weapon," he said. Ashamed, it was meant to stop invasions, not kill children. "You can stop it," Raynor said. "You still have clearance." Rowe hesitated. "They'll know it was me," he said. "I'll be arrested." "Maybe worse." Raynor leaned closer. "I risked everything to save one life," he said. "You can do the same." Rowe sighed and reached for his terminal. "I'll send out the proof," he said. "To the world, not just command," Raynor nodded. "Good, but it was already too late." The building shook suddenly, alarms blaring. Security had been triggered. Someone had traced Raynor's face. He turned to Sarah. "Get to Laika," he said. She nodded and vanished into the hallway. Rowe handed Raynor a small data crystal. "If they stop me, you carry this," he said. Then he pressed a button under his desk, opening a hidden escape chute behind the wall. "Go," Rowe said. "I'll buy you time." Raynor hesitated, then gave a short salute, not as a soldier but as a friend. He dropped into the chute just as the doors burst open and security stormed the room. He landed hard in a service tunnel, his ribs screaming. He ran, following the path back to the safe house. When he reached it, Mara and Sarah were waiting. But Laika wasn't. "She went after you," Mara said, panicked. She heard the alarms and ran into the city. Raynor's heart stopped. Outside, searchlights moved across rooftops, and drones swarmed the skies. Laika was alone, and the city had been told she was the enemy's child. Raynor grabbed his gear and ran into the dark. Every step a prayer, every corner a trap. He had saved her once. He would do it again, no matter what it cost. Rain fell hard over the city. Neon lights flickered through puddles, painting the streets with false color. Raynor ran through the downpour like a ghost. His breath sharp, every second mattered. Laika was out there alone, in a world that didn't want her to live. Sirens wailed in the distance. Drones buzzed above like metal bees, searching, scanning. Posters with Raynor's face lit up digital walls, now marked with a new headline: Enemy child on the loose, shoot on sight. Raynor's heart thudded in his chest like a war drum. He had faced battles, bombs, and betrayal, but nothing felt like this, nothing ever felt this personal. He turned a corner, slipped down a narrow alley. There, tiny footprints in the mud. He followed them past broken crates and flickering lights. Then he heard it, a scream, small and sharp, not far. He burst through a metal door into an abandoned marketplace. Laika was there, curled behind a broken stall. 3 guards aimed weapons at her, shouting orders she didn't understand. She looked up at Raynor with terrified eyes. No, Raynor shouted, stepping between them, arms wide. She's just a child. One of the guards hesitated, another pulled the trigger. The blast hit Raynor in the side. He dropped to his knees, pain like fire spreading through his ribs. But he stayed up, shielding Laika with his body. The guards raised their weapons again. Suddenly, a beam of purple light shot through the air. Mira, Valari backup had arrived. The guards scattered as more beams followed. Sarah ran to Raynor, pulled him up. We need to go now, she said. Voice tight, Raynor nodded weakly. Clutching Laika close, she held him tighter than ever. They escaped through old rail tunnels beneath the city. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them. The wound on Raynor's side pulsed with each step. He was fading fast. They reached a hidden chamber where Mira applied a Valari healing serum. It stopped the bleeding, but Raynor was still weak. I'm fine, he muttered. No, you're not, Sarah replied, but there was no time to rest. Rose data crystal held coordinates for the weapon. A satellite cannon hidden on Earth's second moon, Luna Station 7. It was scheduled for launch in less than 24 hours. Once fired, it would burn through the Valari homeworld in minutes, no second chance. Raynor pulled himself up. His jaw clenched. We're going to Luna, he said. Sarah stared at him. You can barely walk. I don't need to walk, Raynor said. I need to stop a war. They reached the cloaked Valari ship in the early hours before dawn. Laika stayed close, one hand always in Raynor's. She hadn't spoken much since the market, but she kept humming the song he'd first heard her sing in the alien city. It calmed him more than any medicine. The ship lifted silently into the sky, cutting through the clouds like a blade. Stars stretched around them as they entered orbit. Luna grew larger in the window, silver and waiting. Raynor suited up, checked the data one last time. The weapon was already charging, its core glowing like a rising sun. Sarah piloted while Mara ran interference with Valari signals. Raynor and Laika took the main corridor, heading toward the cannon's control room. Raynor's fingers shook as he moved, not from fear, but from weight. The weight of mercy inside the chamber. Human engineers stood stunned as Raynor burst in. He didn't fire. He just stepped forward and showed them the crystal. This weapon ends everything, he said. And not in the way you think. The engineers tried to lock the controls. Raynor shoved past them and jammed the crystal into the console. Images filled the screens. Valari children crying. Humans laughing as cities fell. Laika's face, smiling through tears. One by one, the engineers stopped moving. Even the chief technician lowered his tablet and whispered, "What have we built?" Alarms blared. Auto launch had been triggered. They had minutes, maybe less. Raynor accessed the manual override. "I can change the target," he said. Sarah's voice came through the comms. "If you redirect it into space, it'll explode harmlessly. But the console will fry," Mira warned. "You won't make it out in time." Raynor looked at Laika. Her eyes were full of water, but she didn't cry. She just nodded. She understood. Raynor smiled weakly. "Stay with Sarah," he said. "She'll get you home." Laika grabbed his hand and pressed the glowing pendant into it. "For luck," she whispered again. He kissed her forehead and turned back to the console. Hands bleeding, vision blurry, heart steady. He entered the override code, changed the course. The weapon's aim shifted, pointed to empty space. A countdown echoed through the chamber, 10, 9, 8. Raynor stepped back, looking at the stars through the window. "I didn't fight for war," he whispered. "I fought for her." A blinding light filled the sky. The cannon exploded in the void. Harmless, bright, beautiful. The price of mercy was paid. But no one knew yet if the world would accept the cost. The sky over Valari Prime shimmered with soft light. No ships chased each other. No weapons fired from orbit. For the first time in decades, there was silence in the stars, and that silence carried the weight of everything that had happened. Raynor floated inside a healing pod, his body suspended in soft blue light. Machines hummed gently around him, repairing what war had broken. Outside the chamber, a child sat quietly. Laika, her small hand pressed to the glass, waiting, watching. The explosion from the weapon hadn't killed Raynor. The override had worked, and the blast had been directed into space. But the surge had thrown him across the control room. He had stopped breathing for almost a minute. When Mara and Sarah reached him, he was barely alive now. He floated between sleep and memory. His mind walked through old roads, dusty training grounds, burnt forests, broken homes. He saw faces he couldn't name anymore, and yet every time he drifted too far, one voice called him back. "Raynor," Laika would whisper, "please come back," and then, one day he did. His eyes opened slowly, the glass above him rising. The air felt sharp and new in his lungs. The first thing he saw was Laika's smile, shining through tears. "You're back," she whispered, holding his hand. He couldn't speak yet, so he just nodded. The Queen arrived soon after, her steps slow and careful. She wore no crown this time, only a long white robe. Behind her stood Sarah and Mara. Both smiling gently, Raynor sat up with help. His body sore but steady. "I thought I was done," he said, voice hoarse. "You were," the Queen replied, "but sometimes mercy pulls life back from death." In the days that followed, the Valari city began to change. Walls that once held weapons now held art. Towers that had watched for enemy ships now listened for messages from Earth. Something was shifting. Not fast, not loud, but real. Back on Earth. The broadcast of Raynor's act had reached millions. Videos of Laika's face, of the weapon being disarmed, of Raynor bleeding to save her. It shook people awake. Some called him a traitor still, but others called him something else. A hero. Peace talks began in secret. Ambassadors were chosen. Messages exchanged in code and hope. The Queen asked Raynor if he wanted to return. To Earth? She said, "To your people." He looked out the window at the Valari children playing in the garden. At Laika, laughing as she tried to teach Mira how to braid her hair. "I'm already with my people," he said softly. The Queen smiled. "You saved her," she said. "And through her you saved us." A ceremony was held days later. Not for war, not for power, but for a promise. Valari and humans stood together under the twin moons. The Queen spoke first, then the human ambassador. Then, finally, Raynor stepped forward, dressed not in armor, but in white robes trimmed with both flags. "I was trained to see the enemy as less," he said, voice calm. "But the child I saved was not less. She cried the same, feared the same, loved the same. I was wounded by war, but healed by mercy, and now I stand not as a soldier, but as a bridge." The crowd stood in silence. Some cried, some bowed their heads. Even the sky seemed to hold its breath. That night, Raynor sat in the garden with Laika. She leaned against his side, drawing pictures on the dirt with her fingers. "Will you stay?" she asked. He looked at the stars and nodded. "If they'll have me," he said. She smiled. "You're one of us now." The Queen later made it official. Raynor was given the honorary title of Guardian of the Child Flame, a title given only to those who protect the future, not the past. He was given a home in the upper rings of the city, and Laika visited every morning with stories, questions, and wild ideas. Sometimes human envoys came to speak with him. They brought letters, news, and cautious hope. He helped translate peace into both languages, not with words, but with choices, and slowly, something impossible began to bloom. Trust in time. Raynor planted a small tree at the edge of the city. Its leaves shimmered with both green and silver blue. It grew fast, reaching toward both suns, just like the world around it. As he stood there one evening, watching it sway in the wind, Laika ran up beside him, older now, stronger. "Do you ever miss the war?" she asked. He shook his head. "I miss the ones I lost," he said, "but not the war." "Do you think peace will last?" she asked. He looked down at her. "It will," he said, "if people choose it." Again and again she nodded, then smiled. "You really are one of us, And in that moment, under alien skies, Raynor knew he hadn't just saved the child, he had saved himself.